Hi, everyone. Just want to take a moment to welcome you to this series. So in this series, we're actually going to be taking a look at Mixing the Govna, which is a song by Fat Hat. I have a feeling that this is going to be familiar to a bunch of different Studio One users. And we're going to be mixing this from top to bottom in Dolby Atmos. Now, I'm using Studio One version 6.6, which as of the time that I'm doing this video is the most current release. Now, with respect to my speaker setup, I am also running a full 7.1.4 PreSonus Eris Pro system. So in terms of my main speaker setup, my left, center, right, my left surround, right surround, and rear surrounds, those are all the Eris Pro 6.5s, which you can see over here. And then my LFE is actually a PreSonus Eris Pro Sub 10. And then my height speakers are the Eris Pro 4. So it's a fully functioning PreSonus setup. Now, I have opened up this session. It's been a while actually since I opened up this session. If we take a look at the actual Finder window, you can see that this was mixed May 11th, 2021. This was my last mix, exactly where I left it off when it was approved. So I have opened up this session and let's take a quick look at where we are. Okay, I'm getting a message here that Oxford Drumgate missing devices. Either I don't have an installation for that or an authorization, or perhaps it is something that I removed or uninstalled. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But basically what I want to do here is just actually get a lay of the land because it's been so long since I mixed this. I'm just going to increase my waveforms. And I know for a fact that I did use a lot of hardware on this, so I want to make sure that everything is kind of recalling as it should be. Usually the way that I do it is if I'm using hardware, I usually always make a hardware print of something so that I don't box myself into a corner and I'm not able to do a recall later on down the line. Now that looks like that may be what would be the case for certain individual elements of this. So I guess first of all, let's open this up and I want to take a look at where I left off in terms of my prints. Let's bring our data zoom down a little bit. Okay, so we have our main mix. If we go over here and solo this, let's listen to this exactly as I printed it.
If you're in a drug cartel, wanna be the king of all the dope. If you're downtown in the Vatican, you might wanna be the Pope. In a restaurant.
Okay, this is a really exciting song. I love this track. Let's take a listen to this loud mix, but before we listen to that, I want to see how loud I push this. So we push this 8 dB. When I print a mix, I always print my mix and then I print a loud version. And the version that I send to the client is the loud version of the mix so that when they're hearing it, they're not saying, oh, it's not loud enough. But then I basically just pull off the limiter and then it gets sent to mastering, or if I'm mastering it myself, then I'll master it. But I'd prefer not to master my own stuff. So if we take a look at this loud mix, I want to make sure that there's no inherent differences because I have no clue how hard I was hitting this limiter when I printed this mix. So if we go to this track right over here, just going to expand this flap and we solo this out. Let's first of all make up the differences. So I pushed the main mix, I pushed it +4, and this one had 8 dBs of gain. So let's put this to -4, and this should be a relative equal in terms of our before and after. So let's listen to the mix. We're going to toggle back and forth.
If you're in a drug cartel, wanna be the king of all the dope. If you're downtown in the Vatican, you might wanna be the Pope.
Okay, so they sound very, very similar. Maybe I hear something slightly different with the kick, or maybe that's just a level thing that's kind of fooling me. So I want to just take a quick lay of the land before we get going and before we decide how we want to approach this, because there's a number of different ways that we can approach getting the mix set up to mix in Dolby Atmos. Because the thing you have to remember is it's so easy to take something into spatial audio. You literally go into your song setup, spatial audio, and then you choose Dolby Atmos, and that's it. We could literally, from where we are now, we could take this song and go straight to Atmos. But one thing that I like doing is I like simplifying this, and also I'm on an older system. I'm on a 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is an Intel i9. I don't have a ton of resources, or I don't have a ton of devices in this, and my CPU usage isn't super high, but I definitely don't want to be putting any unnecessary strain. So if we take a look at where my samples are, my device block size right now is 512. And let's change our dropout protection to medium. And let's see where our CPU usage is in this song. I'm just going to solo out this main mix over here.
We ought to love you, 'cause you ran Louisiana the way you should in the time when you were the governor.
Okay, our CPU usage isn't that bad, but having said that, I still want to take the same approach. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through really quickly, and I want to look at all these different elements because I need to actually refresh myself in terms of where I left off with this. Let's start off with the drums. And why would the drums not be playing? Yes, I have a bus comp. This is my hardware bus comp, my warm audio bus compressor. So before we hear anything, we got to deactivate that. Now we'll hear it. Okay, so that sounds good. Let's listen to our bass. Not hearing the bass. Okay, here's the reason we're not hearing the bass. I had a WA2A and an EQP WA. Anytime I use hardware, at least hopefully, anytime I use hardware, I always leave myself a print directly underneath here. You can see that we have this print track. And this is basically just, it was listening, the input is set to the actual track. So this bass track over here, this represents everything that was done with my hardware processing. So if we hear this, and let's solo this out. Okay, there's our bass. Okay, let's listen to our percussion now. Okay, that sounds pretty good. And there's a folder. So we have a bunch of different percussion. It's all sitting in here. Let's lower our data zoom. Yeah, a bunch of different tracks that are linked to that folder. Okay, so let's collapse this folder. And now let's take a look at our keys. So we have the keys. These look pretty self-explanatory. Okay. All right, let's go to this part. What about this one? How do they play together? Okay, so that's it. Looks like that's it for the keys. Now let's move over to, where do we have? We have some electric guitars. So let's take a quick listen to these. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to route the mix bus. Where was it here? I'm going to route this back to mix loud because I want to hear the actual processing that's been applied. So it's going to get louder. Okay, let me close this off for a moment. Where were we? We were listening to the electric guitar. Okay, awesome. And now this one. Okay, these two play together. Okay, and then the next part we have over here, we have heavy chorus electric. Cool vibe. Let's bring this in. And then actually these are all linked to a bus. And if we open up this bus, we'll just double click this. We'll open this up in a mixer. Notice that the actual source tracks, I'm not sending any effects or reverbs from the source tracks. I'm actually sending it from the bus. We're gonna circle back on this room reverb a little bit later on, but that's kind of important. Let's now take a look at, we have vocals. Okay, let's have a listen. Let's play from here. Okay, nothing's coming out, which means that we had hardware. So I did have, I had a WA76B. If I deactivate this, we will hear this.
Got a new one back to...
But it's actually part of the sound. Now, like I said, anytime that I'm doing this type of mixing, I always do a print. The print was listening to this actual track. All we really have to do at this point is make sure that the effects chain is copied over from the main track, which was this one. We need to make sure that that effects chain is on the actual print. So I'm just going to click, hold, and drag. We'll drag all the offends, and now this should actually play. Also, in terms of my output routing, I always make sure that I set my output routing to the exact same. So this was set to mix bus, this one is too.
Got a new one, Baton Rouge born. Call him Bobby J. Kathleen was first lady. Sweet as she can double B.
Okay, perfect. Then we have some vocals over here. I'm not exactly sure what they are. Let's take a listen to all three of these. Zoom in a little bit.
Pitchback was the governor.
I know it looks like those play along with this.
Pitchback was the governor.
Okay. Something, I think I doubled up on something accidentally. That's okay. So we have like a vocal stab and all the routing and stuff like that. I'm not going to worry about it. These over here, these are all of our effects returns. We're going to have to make some decisions in terms of how we want to work with these. There are some awesome opportunities to use effects remapping where you can duplicate your stereo instances and then you can have them going out multiple channels. So you could stick to using your stereo template, But what I think we'll do instead of that is maybe we'll take a look at either rendering these down to audio or seeing if we're going to leave some of these in place. Other than that, what do we got here? Okay, it looks like we got another vocal, and this one is right over here. So if we solo this, okay, this is obviously using processing. Yeah, we have a WA76. That's one of my hardware units, but I gave myself a print. But what we need to do is just make sure that the actual effects chain, click, hold, and drag, and we're just copying over all of the sends. So now this should play exactly as it sounded in the actual mix.
Come on, y'all.
Okay, perfect. And then these little ones.
And JBE.
Okay, those are little effects. And then what do we got here? We have a background vocal stem. Let's expand this just for a moment. How many tracks is in here? We've got quite a lot of tracks. They're all stacked together. We could take a look at a couple different approaches. We could print a stem, or we could print individual stems. I really want to keep this as simple as process, but I just want to have a quick listen. Now, if we play it with the lead vocal. Okay, and then let me just take a look at everything in context. Ooh, okay, we got horns. Let's actually close the background vocals for a moment. And let's take a look at our horns. I know that for this particular track, all of the horns are in a folder, and we have a lot of horns. But what I did is I actually sent the horns out. I sent them through my ADL600 as a hardware insert, and I did this just for the saturation and warmth characteristics. I did make myself a print. The print right now, all we would need to do in terms of this print over here, if we wanted this to be like a one-to-one, is we would just quite simply have to drag and drop the effects send over here. And then if I solo this out. So we do have those available as a stereo, but also if we need to have the individual multi-tracks, we can open up this folder and we have access to those. Last but not least, what is this? Okay, that's a crowd. We can do something cool with that, actually. I could hear that like spinning around or doing something cool. We have some effects returns. And then these ones over here, these are actually just my main mix and my main mix with the limiter. So in terms of like familiarizing ourselves with what's happening with the actual session, that's pretty much it. We have what I consider to be a really decent sounding mix. I'd be interested to know where this actual mix, not necessarily the master, actually where both of these are sitting. So what we'll do is maybe I'm just going to, we'll let this track play out and let's put in a level meter. And I just want to do kind of like a level detection on both of these. So that was this one, and then this one over here. I want to put a level meter on this as well. So I'm actually interested to know where these are sitting. And let me actually let's not add any gain or anything. So just with everything at unity gain. But in terms of what we're listening to, let's listen to this and let's listen to it going into maybe, I don't know if do we have any arrangements? No, we don't have that many markers. Let's just play from here. And I want to do a basic loudness analysis.
Still number one today.
Just do a quick reset.
Got a new one, Baton Rouge born. Call him Bobby J. Kathleen was first lady. Sweet as she can double B. Can't get my main man talking about EWE. From UNT to EWE. You know we ought to love you. Cause you ran Louisiana.
So one of these is going to be closer to -18, which is basically the target that we're going to be working with. I'm not sure whether we will pull in the actual mix or the loud version of the mix to use in our Atmos session. Also, I'm not sure if I even want to actually go through and render stems for each one of these, because the thing to take note of is that we have some options for doing things like track freezes if I wanted to free up my CPU in terms of processing. And then from there, like we know, quick hop over into the song setup, and then we can change this into Dolby Atmos, and then we're mixing in Atmos. And then the way that this session is kind of laid out right now is that I have certain things that are routed to buses, which is useful. But if I want access to something, like for example, the horns is a great example of that. If we look at the horns, if I want access to these, I do have Alta multi-tracks. So I think what we'll do in the next session is we will actually start taking a look at some of those effects returns and doing some session prep before we actually make a decision as to whether we export stems or whether we just freeze some tracks and turn this into the actual spatial audio session. I guess one thing though that I should do before we do anything is let's go File, let's go Save As, and this is, we had the Govna MH Mix version 1.0D underscore, I'm just going to call it 6.6, and we will save this. So this is creating now an updated version. Usually if I'm moving from version 4 or 5 into a brand new version of Studio One, I will usually save to new folder. But in this context, this is perfectly fine, because if we do decide to make something that's a brand new song, we can just do a save to new folder. Either way, I think that's it for this video, and I'll catch you in the next one where we start kind of making sense and coming up with a game plan. So we'll catch you for more in the next video. Cheers.